afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Doyle, Operations Director of CTAM Europe. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. You're in for a treat with today's virtual discussion with this fabulous duo, Maria Rua Aguete, Senior Research Director, TV, Video and Advertising at Omdia, and Jonathan Broughton, Research Director at Plum Research. I'm sure you probably know them from all over the industry events, from past webinars that they also do for us at CTAM Europe. And also we have Theodore Bear today in the background from Maria as well. So he's a famous person or a famous bear at Omdia. We're scheduled for 30 minutes, which also includes time for questions. So please post your questions by using the Q&A button. As always, the recording of this presentation will be posted on the members only section of ctameurope.com. If you're not a current member, please email info@ctameurope.com for more details. Members have access to an industry webinar a month, such as this one, webinars and podcasts from our colleagues across the pond at CTAM US. And we also invite you to apply for a week-long executive management program that we hold annually at INSEAD. I'll follow up with more details about the program in the next couple of days, as registration is now open for the class of 25. Maria and Jonathan have access to the registration list and may follow up with you separately. So thanks for tuning in. I'll switch off now and I'll hand you over. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you for everyone to join us today. We have a fantastic deck that we want to share with you today. Let me share it and introduce ourselves. So, yes, I'm Maria Rua Aguete, Senior Research Director at Omdia, part of Informatech, and I'm very pleased to be here today with
Jonathan Broughton, just a Research Director at Plum Research.
And Theodore de Berg, who's a big fan of CTAM and couldn't miss this presentation because AI is a super hot topic for everyone. So me and Jonathan, we started talking about this subject together 1 year ago, where Jonathan was still at the EBU doing lots of AI cases with some of the members. And me at Omdia was doing lots of surveys to enterprises and consumers about what AI means. So we joined forces. And in the last 12 months, we have been improving and adding new material to this deck. So Omdia, for those who don't know, we cover everything from media and entertainment to telco, AI, IoT. But yes, we have a pillar dedicated all about AI. So thank you to my colleagues, because a lot of data comes from their research.
Plum Research are specialists in streaming viewing data. We have the most complete, accurate and diverse set of data on the planet. So if you are interested in understanding how perhaps your shows are performing or how the market trends are emerging in general, do get in touch. We've got a very unique and sophisticated solution for delivering, the best viewing data that you can imagine.
So let's go to the topic. Why this huge interest in AI? There are lots of headlines about the use of AI. Some of them are negative. I mean, a lot of concern about, will AI steal my job? Will AI write my press releases? Will AI produce content? So people are very worried because there is a lot of negative press about how many jobs will be lost with AI. There are also lots of court cases about actors or people being complaining about AI generating voice content using their voices. So there are people worried about what is the use of AI without the consent of some of these people. But it's not all negative. There are also lots of positives. Yes, some jobs will be replaced with AI, but that means new jobs will be created. I would think it will allow creativity. It will allow those tasks to be more efficiently done with AI and allow people, in fact, to be more human, to dedicate more time to be with others, to be more creative, and we spend more time. And even, as some research shows, we may even become biologically immortal from 2030. So who knows? So as I said in Omdia and with our AI team, we have done an enterprise survey, 800 companies all around the world, asking, what do you think is the most transformative technology at the moment? And number one, by far, ahead of 5G, cloud, and others, it was AI. AI, machine learning, cognitive automation became the #1 most transformative technology. Generative AI, both for text and image-based, became also in the top 10. So obviously companies are ready to invest because they see value coming from AI. The enterprise in companies, I said in the beginning, there was some people being reluctant to use AI, but even in the media and entertainment space, 63% of companies said they have increased their opinion, their views about the use of AI, and they're already investing, they're already using tools because they can see all the benefits that AI can bring to their companies. So 63 is, again, ahead of telcos and ahead of other sectors. And consumers, they have been used to AI, so it's not that AI, we're talking something new. Many times when consumers were using their voice to interact with their TV, searching for content, for personalized adverts in their content, they were already using some of these AI tools, and some of them, they already found them quite useful. So users are also familiar with the concept and the benefits this can bring for them. But this is a very important question that many of you may be wondering. Will AI replace creativity? Jonathan?
It's a great question, Maria. Just before I continue, if our audience do have some questions, we do have the webinar chat facility, so feel free to throw them in there, and we'll try to get to them either as they come up if we have a bit of time at the end. But we're happy to talk around what we're presenting here. Great question, Maria. This is my answer to it. It's not a very precise answer, but it's the answer that I have. Maria, if you go to the next slide, and perhaps it will reveal a little bit about what we're talking about. So what I'm showing you here, and I'm sure many of you may have seen this, and if you're very, very lucky, I've actually had a direct play with the tools behind it. This is, of course, Sora. And Sora is generative AI and is referred to sometimes as a DALL-E of video, as it produces video from text input. But the question is, what's actually going on here? Is this a creative process? And there's sort of two different ways of answering that, and one of is a little bit philosophical. What is creativity in the first place? But the second sort of more technical answer is what I want to talk about today, in terms of how these things actually work, and will they be able to replicate that spark of genius which is so relevant to us as media professionals. So my answer I gave you, no, but sort of yes, is to do with how these models directly operate. The technology behind them at the moment is all about interpretation. It's about inference. So I'm going to give you a kind of slightly bad explanation, perhaps a very simplified explanation of how these models work, both large language models that are text-based and also the video models. And they are fundamentally using statistics. They are using regression models. They are using very sophisticated algorithms, but the maths behind them is effectively a very clever way to get to interpretation. So if you, for example, are asking it about colors, or you're asking it about shapes, what it's trying, sorry, sentences rather than shapes, what it's trying to do is find the most statistically correct way of completing that sentence. So if you ask it what its favorite color is, it will read what's known as its training data set, and it will try to work out what is, from its training data set, the most likely word to emerge in that sentence next. No surprises, if you actually ask ChatGPT what its favorite color is and really push it, it will come up with blue. And that is simply because the bulk of the training data that it has in the majority of the text it has access to, and if you go to the next slide, Maria, it shows that is blue. And the way it's kind of filtering this is it's working backwards through the prompt that it's given and finding the closest match and the most frequent occurrence. And this is a very oversimplified model of how that's working. Now, training data itself is aggregated and it doesn't exist in such a text way, but it's instead highly compressed and highly searchable. But in a very basic way, this is exactly what it's doing. It's searching through large text libraries, finding matches and probable outcomes. So modern AI is pretty much doing one of two things. It's choosing between a couple of options using an algorithmic approach, or it's interpolating between a couple of other things it has as well, which include images. So let's talk about images. And this is a real world example of how diffusion works. So you might have heard of sort of some of the diffusion models which are used with image generation, of which in fact Sora is technically one of them, only in a video form. So if we prompt something like Sora or a diffusion image model with this prompt, draw me a 36-year-old spaceman with a beard, it does exactly the same thing. It consults its library of training data, which again is compressed. So this is a simplified visualization of that. It unpacks that string that it's given, and it tries to understand what it should be using to answer that question. So in this example, it unpacks that into 36-year-old man. Let's find some 36-year-old men. It's unpacked some beards and it's found some spacemen, and it's going to draw a picture of it. Next slide, please, Maria. It does make some decisions around contextually, some sort of broader decisions about what should we go into that. So it will initially start its training data set with making decisions around what a general picture should look like. But fundamentally, image generation and video generation starts with what's on the left. It kind of looks a bit like static, that will be familiar from our old CRT displays from the 90s. But it's random noise. And all it's doing is making decisions around the next step that random noise should take on its journey to becoming a complete image. So it will iterate each time it does this. And the next slide shows exactly how that works. It looks, so these models look at a particular pixel, and it decides what is the most likely shape or color or intensity that particular pixel should be, based on the prompt and based on what is surrounding it. And it continually makes thousands and thousands of iterations until it generates images completely through statistics. But most importantly, it generates them through interpolation. It is using a training data set to say, if this pixel is brown in this space image, what does my training data set suggest that it should then be based on what I'm building now? And that is the only way that diffusion models work. So therefore, it's really good at interpolation. Just because I'm talking about the limitations here doesn't take away from the amazing technical achievement that is creating images or videos entirely through interpolation. And here's a really good example of that. Maria, I think if you click next, you get the rest of these videos. Here's where Sora again is proving its amazing worth at interpolating two videos. So different videos at the top, and the video at the bottom is an interpolation of those two. And I find it very, very hard to determine actually what melds into what. It's done quite so, amazingly smoothly. And it's just because of these interpolation models that exist. But AI can't create something it has no data for. We're dealing with models that are built entirely on training data set and mathematically averaging effectively what happens between the two. And here's an example of what happens when it doesn't have the data to average.
So what did you ask?
If you play this is archaeologists digging up a chair on a beach, which is a ridiculous thing to ask. And it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because there is no training data available to suggest to Sora how a chair should behave when it's dug up on a beach, how archaeologists related to that. So this is the essence of the answer to my question. Creativity is coming up with novel ideas. It's coming up with solutions to questions which haven't been asked. It's creating data that actually we haven't seen before and can't be interpolated from existing information. So my answer is not yet. It's not there yet. In the current models that rely entirely on effectively interpolation and regression, AI can't create that spark of genius, which is creativity. But perhaps what comes next might be a little bit different. So to complete the section we started at the beginning, where we talked a little bit around what's happening now, we thought we'd talk about some development in the market. I think a lot of people are now really familiar with ChatGPT, but a lot of what we're going to be talking about isn't OpenAI based at all. A lot of these are what I've been calling app AI, so effectively AI being deployed within the applications that you're already using. AI is quite expensive to develop, so why are people doing this? Why aren't they just using existing open source models? And this is pretty much it. This is pretty much the answer here. It's incredibly expensive. I think a lot of you will be familiar with the concept of a CPM, so something happening over 1,000. This is kind of an equivalent CPM for queries. Maybe I should call it a QCPM or something like this. Roughly the answer is if you query ChatGPT with a fairly complicated query 1,000 times, somebody pays $300 for that, which is a phenomenal amount of money. And if you have developed any AI models using OpenAI sources, as I have, you'll quickly realize that you've spent a huge amount of money getting not a lot done. So there is a trend to more specific, more efficient, and fundamentally smaller applications. Here I've given an example of the open source Tiny Llama, which is a full large language model, but you can run it locally, you can run it in your browser. And if you look at the equivalent electricity cost, if your computer is fairly efficient, it costs 35 cents per 1,000 queries, not $300. So fundamentally, if you're looking at business applications of actually making some money out of OpenAI, there's quite a big case to be made against moving away from these enormous models and towards more limited but more specific and efficient things. Maria, I'll pass to you.
So thank you, Jonathan, because this goes in line about what are the big drivers for companies to invest in Gen AI. It varies region by region. For example, in Europe, the main driver is for efficiency gains. So 45% of companies said they're really investing in Gen AI because they can see the advantages regarding efficiency. But in Middle East, 5% of companies said for differentiator as a big driver. And in Asia Pacific is where we found the highest number of companies saying that investing in Gen AI will help with R&D to develop new products, new innovation. So you can see there in this column, what are the main drivers regarding investment in Gen AI. It's also interesting to see things like cost savings and cost centers in the top list of drivers. But there is still a lot of work to be done. Consumers are still a bit worried. So we do also an enterprise survey, a consumer survey, asking consumers, are you happy about the use of Gen AI? People are worried about the use of the privacy data, their use, what if AI commits fraud, or who will be responsible if AI does something that it shouldn't, what are the legal implications, copyright. So there is still lots of concerns regarding the use of AI. And in terms of who do they trust, you can see there at the end, they don't seem to trust telco operators that much. In fact, in 2023, they seem to trust them even less than in 2021. So I think there needs to be a lot of more work to be done for consumers to be able to trust these AI applications because they feel in the automotive, telco, and banks and others, there is not a lot of trust yet. Also, companies themselves, they have admitted in this enterprise survey that they are still confused about what is the best way to do this AI integration. There is a lot of lack of in-house personnel who knows how to use AI. So many companies decided to hire third parties, specialists in AI. This varies region by region as well. There is still lack of budget. How much money should we dedicate for this investment? So there is still unclear ROI in what will AI bring us if we invest in AI. I told you before, but I think this is one that I keep hearing a lot from telcos and pay TV operators about call centers and how AI is helping them already to reduce churn. Because when someone is calling, we already know all the history of this person who is calling. We know what they like, what they didn't like. So it will be easier for the person on the line to give recommendations to assist the person with the next steps or what the person will be interested in. It will also help with mental health. First, because you don't need to ask unnecessary questions to the consumer because you have all that information to hand. And second, because apparently they can transform or soften angry customers who are screaming to those people who are trying to help. So it seems like a win-win in call centers. And that's why it comes here in one of the top 4 reasons why we should invest in Gen AI. We are expecting at Omdia that AI spent in media will exceed 13 billion by 2028, and this will be across 3 different segments. It will be across investment in analytics, investment in development, in consumer experience. So it will be across these 3 different areas where we believe the investment will be 13 billion. And now we want to show you some AI applications. I'm going to start with Jonathan.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, we thought to provide a bit of inspiration and perhaps a bit of color about where some of these smaller applications or app AI are actually being deployed. We'd wander across the content supply chain. So we're going to start in pre-production and finish in distribution, just giving some examples of where AI can and in fact is being used. So let's start with pre-production. Maria. Thank you. Brilliant. So we're going to look at script, storyboard, and scene. First off, going straight to script, I think if there are any writers on this call, Maria, next slide, please. If there are any writers on this call, I'm sure you've been opportunistically using what's available out there. ChatGPT is actually pretty good at some of the things here, but there are some very specific tools which are being made around this, things like CinemaFlow and boards. Target sort of at the moment companies which have actually like a really specific need for a certain tone, a certain kind of style of presenting, so less creative and more informational. But we do see kind of storyboarding, the classic storyboarding in sort of replications of the old whiteboard, being able to be produced by that. And I do have anecdotal evidence, of course, from my EBU days when there was a lot of testing of radio scripts, teaching models around what a person's likely response would be, and then asking them kind of what their responses to certain situations would be, just to kind of get a little bit of inspiration around how to storyboard. Effectively, it's like the world's best intern suggesting some ideas back at you. And it's not just text, it's also on the slightly more sophisticated end, and I'm really impressed by this particular model, which is Luma AI, a really cool tool for location capture sampling. So one of the things you can do here is avoid some costly mistakes down the road. Building 3D models is very expensive, and replacing them halfway through a shoot is even worse. So things like Luma AI can very, very quickly capture and build 3D environments to allow you to test what's going on, deliver your assets into a real sort of real environment in Unity or something like that, and also test things like time of day, less people, more people, and various situations there to allow you to very, very quickly test ideas without spending a lot of time investing in full 3D modeling. Next, we're going to move on to content creation. We're going to talk very quickly about predictive camera work and virtual production. We're going to skip the audio question. I'm not sure it's going to work on Zoom. So Maria, next slide, please. Just skip this one if you would. Thank you.
So in that case, I'm going to speak about something that our clients at Omdia are very interested in, is the use cases of AI in sports. AWS have been doing lots with NFL, announcing the use of AI in the Thursday night football. Last week it was Silverstone here in the UK. AWS is a partner with Formula One. Apparently, a car in Formula One sends more than 1 million data points per second that then is being analyzed and gives information about the tires, the speed, the probability of one car taking over another, so informing of loss of decisions during the race. But then there are also, as Jonathan said, different aspects about the AI on sports. For TV presenters going on the stadiums, it means that many people who don't need to be there in person, they can have AI presenters presenting from there, or they can have that content being dubbed to different languages without the need of humans being involved in that. It will help with dynamic highlights, on target prediction. For the camera, it will be very easy to know where to follow, which player may take the ball next. So lots of uses of AI to help with sports.
Thank you, Maria. Now, post-production, not the sexiest of topics and not what tends to grab a lot of the headlines when we talk about AI, which I think tends to focus a lot more on sort of live action video and certainly audio. But this is one of the areas where we see the most sort of finished and real life applications being deployed right now. And of course, it's an area that media in general has struggled with over the last few years in terms of talent crunch, getting enough qualified people to do these tasks, which require a high degree of expertise and focus, while actually maintaining, that quality output that we need. So we'll talk about that, and I think it's one of the more interesting areas especially when we think about existing solutions. Maria, if you go to the next slide. So one of the really cool things about this is a lot of the tools that have been used within pipelines for a very long time are just adding new solutions within that. And they're really, really good at doing a couple of things that used to be very, very time consuming. Just things like making sure that all your actors can be tagged via facial recognition to understand where they're existing throughout your sort of smorgasbord of various clips as you're building new shows. Things like grading, just making sure that the start of the shoot to the end of the shoot, things look correctly, used to be a very laborious and expert process. And now things like Topaz Labs offer tools to do that across an entire finished scene with a click of a button and then a couple of hours of processing, but it still gets done very, very quickly.
And another very good use of AI for me is in the game of dubbing. Why? When we went to NEM Dubrovnik in Croatia, many streamers said one of the reasons why they don't partner in certain regions is because of how expensive is dubbing content to languages like Czech, for example. So they are very excited about what are the opportunities the AI will bring to those countries. So we have here a table where we selected which countries prefer subtitles, which countries prefer dubbed. Czech Republic is one of those that they want dubbed content. So AI will help a lot of content to be translated in a very cost-effective way. Many of you may say, will this replace humans? At the moment, speaking to dubbing companies, AI is being used as a tool to complement the use of humans in this process. But going forward, who knows, AI will be enough tool to replicate accents, dialects, or even reproduce voices of actors. And there we have another table, courtesy of Plum research, about the popularity of Spanish content, where is it watched? And the #1 country in the world watching Spanish content is in fact United States. But what we are trying to say with this chart is how popular non-English content is now all around the world. So the use of AI will allow any language to be translated into any other language around the world.
Yeah, and that it's super interesting. We spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe in the last month. One of the key factors there is streaming services really struggling to penetrate those regions without local language content. So there's efficiency gains both there for making more hyper-local content, and of course, perhaps being a bit better at localizing to a plethora of languages rather than just the sort of 4 or 5 which tend to be available now. Search and discovery. We actually got a question in the chat about that. In some sense, we started AI to revolutionize search and discovery. It hasn't happened. Will it get better when? Brilliant question. Let's talk about that for a moment. There is a big problem in search and discovery. You are absolutely right, Char. And the problem with that is that the way we've approached it tends to be a little bit by metadata. We tend to bucket things into genre. We tend to bucket things into movies and series, etc. And a lot of recommendation happens around that. But the way people tend to interact with content, and there's some really good studies on this, is very emotional. It's about the context that they are in at the moment. It's about who else is in the room. It's about who tends to control the TV remote. It's about what happened in their day. And currently, a lot of the problem is we don't have the information on that about people. And even if we did have the information, it's actually really difficult to build statistical models around that. And you do need something which can process a lot of quite crazy and seemingly unrelated data into something which is a sort of logical model. And I mean, I'm sure some of you who are interested in AI will have picked up things like medical advances which are happening around things we haven't quite thought of. It's my opinion that, in fact, search is very, very much like this in terms of gathering a lot of very noisy data points and carving some method from that particular chaos. Final slide, Maria, from me. This is kind of what's happening at the moment, and a lot of these companies are pushing into that, with one exception, which is Tizen. So both LG and TiVo are trying to understand a little bit more about what people are doing. LG is pushing more into sort of emotional sort of behavioral patterns, so that they're pushing a little bit in terms of using their existing data to try and create a better understanding of, or a deeper understanding around how people behave on a predictable basis. Yep, sorry, go back, Maria. I was just pausing. Whereas TiVo are doing a lot around looking into sort of the basically building a model which conflates that a lot with their sort of deep data that they've been collecting for a very long time on some of the more interesting parts of data on content itself. So very deep descriptors around what's going on there. Tizen's gone on a completely different angle, and in fact are pushing into just making things more accessible. So modifying the image, modifying the video, and in fact letting somebody else solve the problem of recommendation and discovery.
So I know we're already running out of time, it's 3:31. So just the last 2 minutes, other interesting examples, AI in cinemas. I was really excited when I read this from the CEO of View Cinemas, Tim Richards, saying how the use of AI is now increasing the number of foreign languages available in the UK. So using AI and not humans to fully 100% schedule the content, the titles available in cinemas, meant that we have seen now more foreign language than ever available on those screens. They know who lives in each area, they know what people like. So this has allowed a better use of AI during cinemas. Last one is about AI and the use of advertising. Again, super exciting one, because with this, they will stop using third-party cookies. Google has announced third-party cookies will not be allowed. So we need new innovative ideas to advertised, and AI will be that tool super efficient in this case. Again, another example from AWS that will replace 3D images. So if someone in the UK is drinking British beer, the same content in Spain can be drinking Estrella Galicia. So you can replace the brand, the 3D image in any country with anything you want. So to finalize, Jonathan, what is your summary?
Biggest takeaway is that some of the big models out there are super impressive, but they do not make sense from a business perspective. They are too expensive. So a lot of the development we're going to see over the next couple of years are in smaller, more exact, more precise models. A lot of them within the tools you're already using, and some of them from genius people who are going to come up with ideas we've not thought of before.
So yes, I know this quote is being said by everyone. AI will not steal your job, but people who know how to use AI may steal yours. So let's be prepared and be ahead of the game. With this note, if you want more information about what we presented this today, about this deck, or about any of the surveys Omdia has done to enterprise consumers, or information about Jonathan, Plum, or use cases, here are our emails. I hope you enjoy it. So that was very quick from us, but I don't know if there is more questions in the chat.
There's one question, Maria.
Yes.
It's a it's a great question. It concerns itself. It's quite long, so let me summarize. Effectively, it's saying, thank you, Maria, for being optimistic, but soon AI actors are going to be smart enough and even more extended self-teaching to the rest of the world and become better at tasks, faster and cheaper than the human workforce. So perhaps this next generation of AI models that's coming up, what kind of new jobs can you imagine that are unable to be done with well-trained self-teaching AI? When the next generation comes along, Maria, what are we doing?
Great question that will be answered in the next seminar, CTAM Part 2. We are running out of time. Thank you very much for joining us today.
But my answer is kind of what I'm going to double down on, the smaller models. The newer generations that are more sophisticated and more capable are increasingly expensive. And I think the key point of that question that you've written there is cost. You've mentioned that it's cheaper than a human workforce. I think there are some very sophisticated things that our brains are pretty good at, and if you do want to replicate some of those mechanisms, for now it's still prohibitively expensive to do that within an AI environment. I think we're going to push into a lot of sort of mundane AI applications for the next sort of 5-6 years at least. Who knows, if we get a positronic brain after that, perhaps we all need to become plumbers or something.
No, but seriously speaking, I know we're running out of time, but please, this person, if you want to email me, we can follow up this question because we are doing lots of research on that one as well. So thank you very much for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you in Part 2 of this exciting topic.
Well, we could have stayed on all afternoon, couldn't we, really? This could have been a 3-hour talk, really. Absolutely. Thank you both very much. Thank you for the presentation. Maria, if you want me to send it around, then you can shorten it, or however you want to. Just send it to me and I can send it around to everybody.
Fantastic.
Thank you both. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And if you have more questions, then email over. Thank you, and enjoy your holiday. Oh, and this is the last one now until September, so we'll see you all in September. Enjoy the summer. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.